is a sad commentary on the state of our knowledge that meters of bookshelves in conservation libraries sag with the weight of tomes devoted to the horrors of deforestation and the disappearance of the world's rainforests. Yet only a few centimeters are so far occupied by books that deal with the theory and practice of reforestation in presently degraded rainforest lands. We have beaten our breasts long enough. Let us now bend our backs.
Fingal Peninsula is a thin slice of sand extending some 8 kilometres along the Tweed coast from Kingscliff to the Queensland border, with the ocean, Cook Island and the Danger Reefs on the eastern side and the Blue Tweed River estuary on the inland side. Fingal is a coastal masterpiece. It's adorned with 4 lakes, complete with bird and fish life. There's the Giant's Causeway, made of tightly packed basalt like its namesake island. It also supports a small but important littoral or coastal rainforest remnant, 2 state wetlands and magnificent stretch of coastal heath on 100,000-year-old sand dunes. Unfortunately, it's been a much abused piece of land. As on many areas of the Australian east coast, sand mining from the 1930s until the mid-60s dramatically altered the shape and reduced the height of the coastal dunes and removed nearly all the native vegetation. In those days, revegetation was a simple affair and consisted of planting rows of casuarinas, most outside their correct niche, with an understory of Bitou bush, an import from South Africa. The combination fulfilled the function of binding the sand and provided plant cover for the time, but it's never been aesthetically pleasing and it contains serious problems. For example, this area went from littoral rainforest complete with palms, epiphytes and ground orchids to this. Casuarinas have not regenerated well due to vigorous competition from Bitou. After 20 years, a forest of dead limbs mars the appearance of many spots on the peninsula. Bitou bush is a declared pest in Queensland and one which is causing huge problems in New South Wales. It chokes out the native vegetation while preventing natural regeneration. One plant can produce up to 50,000 seeds in a year. They can germinate and be in flower within 6 months, and some of these seeds will survive in the soil for up to 7 years. It provides a less than satisfactory dune binding medium on frontal dunes. It forms hummocks which allows wind erosion between them. This leads to blowouts and destabilisation of dunes. Major victim of the mining years was the littoral rainforest. And because of this and expanding development, it is a rare ecosystem in New South Wales. Over 90% has been lost in the last 50 years. Only a small remnant still exists at Fingal, but it contains more than 120 plant species, 4 of which are rare and endangered. It's probably the last place on Earth that this tree, the Cryptocarya fetida, is naturally regenerating in a sustainable way. It was against this background that an effort to protect and enhance the remaining original rainforest and to restore some of the past damage was born.
Part of the rainforest remnant runs along behind the houses, so we're quite familiar with it. In 1986, the Bitou was climbing in over the top of the edge, so something needed to be done about it. Initially, a neighbour offered to come and help me clear the Bitou one morning a week. I worried that my baby might get out of the habit of a morning sleep, but the baby continued to sleep, and that was how the group was started. Other people came to help us, and some of those people are still coming today, 9 years later. We worked slowly, clearing by hand, but we never became despondent because I was able to focus on the bit of Bitou that had been cleared and not the sea of Bitou that was remaining. In those early days, we learnt a lot, gained a lot of knowledge, and the results are quite impressive. We began to collect the seeds and grow them in my backyard. Later, the nursery was established. In 1988, the Soil Conservation Service of New South Wales established dune care groups, and we affiliated with them. This area was overrun with asparagus, and now it's been hand cleared. These seedlings are able to regenerate. They no longer have the asparagus that's competing with them. It became apparent that we were creating small islands of cleared area in an ocean of Bitou. So the cleared areas were still surrounded by the seed source. So in 1990, we developed a 10-year plan for the peninsula to eradicate Bitou. And to do this, we needed extra trees and a great variety of the site-specific trees. And in 1991, the nursery was established, and we have produced about 15,000 trees a year since then, and we supply other Tweed Coast groups as well as our own needs.
This regenerated area you see here now, 3 years ago, was totally covered in Bitou, even reaching up these trees with about 3 to 4 metres. We had a lot of trouble reaching up with extension sprays to spray it. And we're also, when we did spray it, we were left with all this dead Bitou, which became a fire hazard. And we had to then roll over it with a Land Rover to squash it all down. But the task was too tremendous.
Given that we were only a small group of people, we came to realise that we had to reduce the labour input dramatically and find a method of getting the Bitou bush onto the ground. We decided to try slashing with a tractor before rather than after spraying. The initial results and benefits were immediately apparent. Firstly, there was a thick mulch left on the ground. Secondly, we had a vastly improved access to the area. We waited for the Bitou bush to regrow and then sprayed it. As you can imagine, it was just so much easier to do this. By this stage, we had acquired a 200-litre electric sprayer, and the hoses could easily be pulled over the area. The third bonus was the massive reduction in costly herbicide usage. The disturbance on the ground and the influx of light seemed to stimulate the germination of Bitou seeds, and this was killed in the initial spraying. We try to allow as much regrowth as possible before spraying to allow for maximum seed germination. Under the right conditions, Bitou can go from seed germination to seed production within 6 months. So ideally, we are looking to spray at about these intervals.
It's been found that after the first 18 months to 2 years, the germination of Bitou seedlings in a cleared area drops off dramatically. This correlates with the Queensland experience. The area still has to be regularly weeded, but the competition to trees is drastically reduced. Most of the areas where we work, we've got a lot of dead trees killed from competition from Bitou. And a lot of those will break down and fall down slowly, but many of them fall down in one piece. And in the regeneration stage, you're going to get trees up 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and if they're not brought down initially, they're going to fall down on your new growth and damage your trees. So we decide to drop them. And what we do, we drop them down, clear around the tree first, drop them, and cut them up into lengths of 1 to 2 metres so that the log is lying flat on the ground. That way it can rot away, and we find that's gone in about 3 to 4 years. And the top third of the tree, we just smash up with the slasher, and that goes into mulch as well.
We don't clear on the windward side of a dune, but when the tractor comes into an area, we either stake or tie around a tree so that it's protected and you won't run over it, especially the ones like this. And also, when he's flashing further in there, or someone always walks with the tractor and points out exactly where a small tree might be. Try to protect the native trees as much as possible.
What we have also found, after the initial clearing, the trees that have survived the Bitou take on a better shape and colour and nice new shoots. And also, dormant seeds start to come up, like that macaranga there, and nice little banksias and casuarinas have all been cleared of the bitter, so they're surviving and they're coming up by themselves.
Bitou bush is a great opportunist. It'll quickly establish in areas where there is bare sand and light or damage to local vegetation and along the edges of roads. Typically, it can be seen quickly establishing after earth disturbance, fires and along tracks. If it can get established, it'll tend to outcompete native species. However, a thick coverage of vegetation and especially a dense canopy will virtually exclude it. And this, of course, is the ultimate aim in any Bitou eradication and native regeneration program.
We're working to create a literal rainforest here. We plant in autumn when it's cooler and wetter. We have to be sure that the ground is moist because we cannot water all these trees. If we plant when it is wet and get some reasonable follow-up rain in the next few months, we have minimal losses. Each tree is given a boost of nitrogen before it leaves the nursery and a fertiliser pill when it's planted.
Dune vegetation shows a succession, which in this case is a series of roughly parallel zones from the spinifex on the front dune through to the vines and wattle which will grow in the dip, the swale, then the casuarinas on the crest of the dunes, the banksias behind that, and then the little rainforest. Each segment of vegetation creates a niche for the other vegetation behind it to flourish. These casuarinas provide a windbreak and protect the more sensitive plants behind by trapping the salt from the wind on their foliage.
Group member Brian Mason was, for 20 years, senior agronomist with the Queensland Beach Protection Authority. Brian has had outstanding success in the establishment and regeneration of coastal habitats along the Queensland coast. As part of his work, Brian ran a number of trials to establish ways of increasing growth in coastal species grown in sand.
We set out to see if we could increase the growth rate of various species through the application of fertilisers. We planted plots, then selectively fertilised groups with different fertiliser combinations. The results were consistent and clear. Essentially, we found that trees regularly fertilised with nitrogen had growth rates which were 10 to 15 times greater than those which did not receive nitrogen. Except in the case of Banksia, the presence or absence of phosphate and trace elements had little effect. The nitrogen was the limiting factor to growth. This can be seen in these trials with eucalypts. Here is a group without nitrogen that were just 18 months old, and here is one in the same trial that received regular applications of nitrogen. The results were similar with leptospermum, but were most spectacular with the eucalypts. In this trial, the photo was taken at 20 months. Some of the trees in the nitrogen section at the back have even begun flowering. The ones in the front section, as you can see, have barely moved.
We'll fertilise this eucalypt now. We use about half a cup or 75 grams of nitram, and we sprinkle it about 30 to 40 centimetres away from the trunk of the tree. It's important that the ground should be moist at the time because otherwise the nitram might pull water away from the tree system. These eucalypts are about 2.5 years old. They were fertilised regularly in their early stages, and they're actually growing in pure sand.
So you actually started from scratch on this area, didn't you? I mean, you really had to plant the whole thing again.
Yes, covered in bitter.
So what sort of tree is that?
This one is the Macaranga tenarius. It's a pioneering species in regenerating areas, and it provides lots of mulch and shade and protection for the other trees that are coming up around it.
Right. How old is that tree to get to that?
Well, it's been 3 years since this area was cleared, and so that's a lot of these are self-regenerated, some are planted, and they attract the birds as well, which is important, and so do the banksias over here.
Banksia, oh yes.
And it's flowered too since it's in the 3 years, and the birds bring in a lot of seeds.
Yes.
And some of them are good seeds, some of them are weeds, but they bring a lot of other species in with them when they come.
Yeah,
and
sure.
these trees protect them very well.
It's a big job.
Yes, but it actually decreases over time. We'll come in and hand weed this every 6 months,
Right.
but as it will be less and less each time we come in, and the mulch on the ground actually stops the regeneration, stops the germination, inhibits the germination of the seed.
So could other people do what you're doing here, say on a different site altogether?
Well, every site has its own particular problems, and what we're doing particularly lends itself to where you've got a monoculture of Bitou, and it wouldn't be so good if you had a steep site or an area where there's lots of natives.
Right.
But and there's other groups that are doing the work differently, and it's just a matter of taking what you know is useful and what will work, and then trying other things as well. And the definitive book on restoration ecology hasn't been written yet. We're still working.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that you just have to make a commitment, a long-term commitment to doing it. You have to, first of all, you have to drastically reduce the amount of Bitou seed in the area and then replant with the natives that you want. And then to keep on eradicating the Bitou as it comes up till you win.
Perseverance is a pretty good word to you guys.
Oh,
isn't it?
You just have to be ready to keep going.
Yes.
It's sort of a 10-year plan at least.
Yes. Well, as long as you've got the vision. Long-term security of funding for projects like this one has always been a problem for long-term planning.
If governments and funding bodies are really serious about solving the Bitou problems, they firstly must be prepared to fund the purchase of appropriate heavy equipment. They have refused to do this in the past. Secondly, funding arrangements must cease to be an annual lottery affair, where groups can start a 7-year project and be funded for the first year and not receive any more funding. If the commitment is there from the group to complete the project, the commitment should be there from the funding bodies to fund it.
The successes and commitment of dune care and land care groups, like the Fingal Group in caring for the land, has opened opportunities for land management and rehabilitation that 10 years ago would not have been thought possible. One of those opportunities is clearly to bring Bitou under control. A small but ongoing commitment from government to employ a number of properly equipped teams working full-time with local and dune care groups could see the beginning of the end of the Bitou problem. The job has already been done in Queensland. At this point of time, halfway through the decade of land care, it is surely the time for the community and government to combine and make the commitment to beat the Bitou.
The last comprehensive survey of Bitou in 1982 revealed that some 60,000 hectares and over 60% of the New South Wales coastline was infested. It is estimated that this figure will rise to 90% by the year 2010.